Hey everybody, this is me Manahil, Remotejobwali, and welcome to another episode of Future of Work. And I am a level 2 student at Rihan School. I am on a mission to help 1 million people in Pakistan earn minimum $1,000 per month through remote job. Today I am excited to welcome someone with over 20 years of leadership and HR experience who has worked with organizations like Apple, Target, OI, and now leads her own consulting firm, helping companies build stronger leaders and high performing teams. Please join me in welcoming Lesley Herald. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for
How
having me.
are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. How can I pronounce your name? Lesley?
Lesley, correct.
Alright, thank you so much
Yes.
for your time. So, before we dive into HR and leadership, tell us who is Leslie outside of work.
Gosh, outside of work, I have been married to my husband Joel for 20 years as of last week. And together we have two teenage daughters. One is about to head off to university to study to be a nurse, and the other will be a sophomore in high school. And so that's been really quite a joy in my life to be their mom and their biggest cheerleader. In addition to that, I enjoy coaching the girls cross country program at our local high school. And so it's kind of a unique experience to be a coach both on the field, right, for athletes as well as for leaders. So that's a little bit about me.
That's really impressive. You are mom of two. That's shocking for me. You look like very young.
Oh, thank you. You're very kind. They've,
Very
they're great kids. I'm very fortunate to, have them part of my life, and it's been quite a joy. And I just can't imagine my life without them. It's gone so quickly, especially as one heads off to university here soon. But I've really enjoyed it. They're amazing. Thank you.
All right, that's good. So I was reading about your journey from Apple to leading global talent, and now running your own consulting firm.
Mhm.
What inspired this incredible journey?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't have what I would say is like the typical HR professional journey. And that's truly because, I spent the first 15 years of my career in leadership roles. So, working for both Target and Apple, I was in people leadership roles. And so, I really have a deep understanding of the operations of those organizations, but also some of the big challenges, which mainly are centered around people. And so, I was able to take my experience at those organizations and apply it when I was leading a global team at OI Glass, which is a large manufacturing company. And then after about 7 years there, decided that I felt like there was an opportunity to support primarily some smaller organizations that don't necessarily need an HR person in-house full time, on salary. And so I've been doing that now full time for about a year and a half and really have enjoyed it.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So now let's move on your career journey. Was there a defining moment when you realized HR and leadership development were your true passion?
Um, I I don't know that there was a specific moment in time. I think just understanding that being an effective leader really comes down to having the right people on your team. And a lot of times you hear organizations talk about their strategic plans and their organizational goals, and the reality is people are the ones that bring those to life and help accomplish those goals and help businesses be successful. And so without having the right people, all of that is unlikely to happen. Sometimes you see people get lucky, but it doesn't necessarily last. It's not sustainable. And so that's really where I saw an opportunity to lean in and focus a little bit more on the people element of business.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for your answer. Now, looking back, what's one career decision that changed your life?
One career event, you said?
One career
Decision. Well, I think the biggest one for me was the decision to start my own company. Obviously it's a large leap of faith after working for large recognizable corporations for, I mean, gosh, 20 plus years, right? And so that was a big leap of faith for me. I took a chance, but really believed in the opportunity that I have or that I had to support different companies. And again, have been extremely grateful for it. I've learned a great deal. When you start your own company, you're everything, right? Your IT, your payroll, your marketing. And so I've learned a great deal about all those other elements of business that I frankly didn't have to spend any time on in my prior roles. And so I've been really grateful for the opportunity to support so many companies. And I've learned a great deal along the way.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing us. Now, in your opinion, what's the difference between a boss and a true leader?
Great question. I think, those are terms that sometimes are used interchangeably, but really reflect something quite different. A boss is somebody that's going to tell you what to do, when to do it, and probably how to do it. A leader is going to provide what I refer to as a little bit more around guardrails, right? They're going to keep you out of trouble, probably, maybe prevent you from making a really big, really poor decision, but they're going to ask questions and they're going to help lead you to the right solution. They're going to empower you to make the right decision. They're going to set a really good example for you. They're going to support you, hopefully have a really good relationship with you, which is ultimately going to allow you and provide the right conditions for you to be successful.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Leslie, can you describe what qualities make someone unforgettable as a leader?
I think it really comes down to that relationship piece. In my career, I've been fortunate to work for some fantastic leaders. I've also had some leaders that maybe weren't so great. And it really came down to the investment that they made in me as the individual. And that's everything from taking an interest in me as a person first and an employee second, but also helping me grow, challenging me. And I think the challenging me part is really important. Sometimes we think, gosh, if I have a great leader, they're going to make my job really easy. Well, I have the ambition to want to grow and develop and improve my skill set. So I've always thrived under a leader that gives me the opportunity to have maybe a stretch assignment where maybe it's something I haven't done in the past, but they can help support me in gaining that experience and ultimately being successful on that project. So I think, being challenging me, providing the right, environment, supporting me, believing in me, and ultimately, helping me be successful and celebrating with me. I think those are really key components.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, let's move on to your hiring career. So, now tell me, when you interview someone, what are the first things you notice?
Primarily, I'm looking for a culture fit. So many times we get really hung up on how many years of experience do they have and what skills do they have, what certifications do they have. Skills are important, don't get me wrong. And depending on the type of role we're hiring for, certainly there's a background, there's an education component. But ultimately, it's so critical that we realize every person that we add to our organization has the ability to make us better or make us worse from a culture standpoint. And culture is a really key component. It's something that people are looking for. People want to be part of a positive culture. They want to have an engaging work experience. And so it's important that, when I'm interviewing someone, that they bring that element to the table. They understand that they own a piece of culture too. It doesn't just all fall on the leader. So I want to hear about the experiences that they've had. So for example, a red flag for me is always going to be when someone is speaking negatively about either their current or their prior employer. That doesn't mean that they didn't maybe have a poor experience, right? But in an interview setting, I want to hear about what you're bringing to the table so that I can be confident that you are going to make us better and you're going to elevate the culture that we have.
Okay, thank you. All right. Now tell me, what's the biggest mistake a job seeker make during interviews?
I think it goes to when the candidate speaks negatively about either their current or former employer, as I stated earlier. I also think when they're relying too heavily on their years of experience, right? Sometimes somebody can have a totally different experience, maybe a better experience, but have it be shorter. And so the other thing I would say is, making sure that they're asking questions about the organization. In many cases, I think candidates forget that they're interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them. And really strong candidates in many cases have options. And so they're looking to make sure that they're making the right move. So they should be asking the right questions to be confident that this next opportunity is going to be the best fit for them. So never forget that you're also interviewing the company.
Okay, I never heard this, that when we give interview, so we are also doing the company interview. Thank you so much for sharing that. Um, Now I would like to ask, if you had to choose between skills, experience, and attitude, which matters most and why?
Gosh, what was the third? Skills, experience, and what was the third?
The third one is attitude.
Attitude. Honestly, for me, it's going to be attitude. I think skills would probably be second, and then experience maybe third. Sometimes someone's experience actually can be a hindrance. Again, it depends on what the experience is. Sometimes somebody that has less experience is easier to train the way we want them to be trained. And sometimes with a lengthier amount of experience, you're actually having to break some bad habits that have been formed over time, simply because that's what another company enforced or allowed. So, but I think if someone has the right attitude and has that growth mindset and that interest in learning something new, doing something different, trying new things, I think that will take them very far.
All right, thank you so much
Mm-hmm.
for explaining why attitude matters. Now, I would like, what advice would you give to students preparing for their first job
Yeah.
or a first, internship?
Yeah, that's a really good one. The my biggest piece of advice to somebody that's newer, couple things. So building relationships before you need them. I think sometimes we focus on networking, which all networking is building relationships. People get scared by that word, networking. It's just relationship building, right? But it's so important if we have an opportunity to build those relationships before we need them. So if they're, completing their studies and have an opportunity to be in the workforce, whether it's a co-op or an internship or whatever the case is, establishing those relationships, I think will help them be successful in the long run. I would also say one of the biggest missed opportunities is seeking feedback. It's amazing to me. I've encountered a lot of people that are pretty advanced in their careers that are not good at giving and receiving feedback. So the sooner we can get comfortable with the interest in asking for feedback, making adjustments, learning from our experiences, the better off people are going to be. So the people that are really on a fast track and that are going to grow and develop at a pretty quick rate are the ones that are asking for feedback on a regular basis.
Or but sometimes we are scared to ask that to take feedback. So how we can overcome it and how we can ask for feedback?
Great question. I think we have to look at, you've probably heard the phrase feedback is a gift. And I know that sounds maybe a little bit cheesy, but it really is. When someone is giving you feedback, it's because they care about you. And so I think it's important to keep the intent of the feedback in mind. Now, the person that's providing the feedback, there's sort of an expectation or responsibility that they have to make sure that it's positioned appropriately. So hopefully it prevents the person that's receiving the feedback from becoming defensive and coming up with excuses. Keeping in mind it's just one person's perspective. Someone's feedback doesn't necessarily mean you have to change everything that you're doing, but it does give you an indication of how you can be perceived, which I think that is really important. So making sure when you're giving feedback that we're positioning it from the element that we're trying to help the person, not make them feel bad or not make them be defensive, right? And then as the person receiving the feedback, I think you really have to be in the right mindset to accept the feedback and understand that the things that you might hear might be difficult to hear, but it might be something that you really need to hear. And again, when you remember that that person has the best of intentions and just wants to help you, it takes whatever message they're giving you and makes it a little bit more manageable to receive.
Okay, but if someone giving us a feedback and maybe they just assume that we do this, that we are like this, so if they are not giving if they are just assuming that we are this and they just give us feedback, so how we can should we react?
I think the person that's giving the feedback, one of the things that I always recommend is that they ask for permission. And that can sound as simple as, hey, do you mind if I give you some feedback? Is now a good time? And essentially what that does is it lets the person know that I'm going to give you a message and it might be difficult to hear, but it also gives that person that's on the receiving end an opportunity to say, you know what? Today's sort of been a rough day. I do want to have this conversation, but I don't think I'm ready for it right now. So it gives them the opportunity to continue that conversation at a time where it might be a better kind of two-way conversation, because that's really what we want in a feedback message.
All right, thank you so much for sharing that. Now let's move on to the AI and future of work. AI is changing every industry. How do you think it will change HR over the next 5 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. I agree. AI, I don't know that there's many industries that AI won't impact to some capacity. So I certainly think AI will impact some of the more policy and procedure type work that tends to fall under the HR function. So, it can be used to draft a handbook for an organization or update a policy. And so that can be a useful tool that might expedite drafting a document that's important. What I will say is where it will fall short is where a lot of companies struggle is how do we utilize that as a tool, right? It's not going to help us understand, okay, now we have this handbook or we have this policy. How do we use it to provide some consistency in the workplace, but also it's not necessarily making decisions for us, because there's always the human element. And I always remind people, no two situations for the most part are the same. The circumstances are different. So we need strong HR partners. We need strong leaders that can make decisions that are consistent and fair, but also take every situation into consideration.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your answer. Which human skill will become even more valuable because of AI? What do you think?
I think, gosh, I think emotional intelligence is something that, you're not going to see AI replace. And that is a skill that, or an area that a lot of leaders, I think, could benefit from some additional guidance and support on. And again, it's making sure that we're taking good care of people and recognizing what AI can do for us. And certainly it's a helpful tool, but there's other things that it will not replace, and actually will make it even much more evident that we need to focus some developmental efforts to making sure that people are comfortable in that emotional intelligence space. I think I lost your audio.
You hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you.
All right. Now I would like to ask, if you were advising a 16 years old today, what skills should they start learning immediately?
So I would say a big piece of that is going to be networking. Like I mentioned earlier, building those relationships, talking to as many people as you can. People have these fascinating stories. And from my experience, no two people have the same experience, right? There's some that are similar. Maybe they studied the same thing at university. Maybe they worked at similar places, but no two people that I've encountered have the same experiences. So it is so critical to put yourself out there, meet as many people as you can, learn people's stories, build those relationships. I think there's so many opportunities out there, and it's tough to get a grasp on what they want to, what I want to do with my life at 16 years old. And so learning from other people's experiences, what worked well for them, what maybe was a little bit more challenging. I think it also helps develop their confidence and their ability to interact with people when they're talking to people of all different walks of life. So having those conversations, making eye contact, establishing those relationships are all things that, regardless of the career path that they choose, will be beneficial to them.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. Networking is really important, and I also think that networking is very important for us, and it help us to grow better and faster. Thank
Yes.
you so much for your answer. Now let's move on to your personal growth. What's the best piece of career advice we ever received?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. I think it comes down to being willing to try different things. I worked in operations, as I shared earlier in our conversation. And so I worked in Target stores, I worked in Apple stores. And so I was always willing to do anything I was asking someone else to do. So depending on the circumstances, sometimes it was go in and work an overnight shift and unload a truck next to my logistics team. Sometimes it was go clean the bathroom. Sometimes it was go get shopping carts in the parking lot. And that really helped me understand the different roles that were on my team. It helped me build relationships. And I think there was something very powerful with showing my team that I'm not going to ask them to do anything I'm not willing to do myself. And so that was really good advice. And I think that advice alone helped me establish some really critical relationships early on in my career.
Thank you so much for your answer. So, which book has influenced your leadership style the most?
What was that?
I'm asking, which book has
Book. Okay.
influenced your leadership style the most?
Yeah, I would have to say the Growth Mindset book by Carol Dweck was a very powerful one. I think, again, the sooner we can get that in the hands of even students, the better off not just the workforce is going to be, but the world is going to be, right? If we can really allow people to understand that there's an opportunity to do things different, think differently, and the power of positivity. So I would say that I've read some amazing books along the way, but I think that is probably the most influential one.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. What's one daily habit that has contributed the most to your success?
I really have focused on my time management skills. As you can imagine, being a business owner, you get pulled in a lot of different directions. And so I've had to really be very intentional with how I spend my time. So I've sort of tried to put into practice the time blocking method. So there's certain things that are on my calendar that reoccur every single day. And that's how I am able to protect my time and make sure I'm spending my time where I need to spend it versus allowing the week to sort of happen. And then I get to Friday and now I'm trying to play catch up because I missed some critical things. So that time blocking element has been really helpful to me.
All right, thank you so much for sharing that habit with us. Now, imagine millions of students around the world are watching this interview. If you could leave them with one message about leadership, careers, building a meaningful life, what would you want uh, them to remember forever?
Gosh, that's a tall order. I have to think about that. I think um, life moves very quickly, and I think we always like to think that we have more time. I have time to read that book. I have time to go to that networking event. I have time to study that topic. And so I would say my biggest piece of advice to them is to be intentional with their time and really think through, setting goals. I think is critical. Making sure that we have some checks in there to make sure we're progressing up towards our goals. Writing those goals down is also really important. Telling someone about the goal, because then you have somebody else that's going to help you, help hold you accountable, that's sort of cheering for you from the sidelines. So I know that's a couple things, but I think they sort of go hand in hand. So making sure that they are goal oriented, and have some goals for themselves, and again, communicating those goals with other people.
All right, thank you so much for your message. Leslie, thank you so much for your wisdom and experiences with us. It has truly been an
Thank,
inspiring conversation.
yes, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for that. And to everyone watching, thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Future of Work podcast. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, keep preparing for the future of work. Thank you, and see you in the next episode. Thank you so much, Leslie. Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Take care. Bye bye.